Hello and welcome to the Daily Note. I'm James A. Brown. Thanks for joining me. You can check out my work at jamesabrown.net. That's jamesabrown.net. I'm here with Dr. John E. Lewis, PhD. He is from the University of Miami and has this array of facts and details. It was really interesting going through his detailed analysis of the GLP-1 craze. But before we get there, I'd like to get to know John a bit. John, did medicine find you or did you find medicine?
James, that's a great question. I'm happy to be here, by the way. Thank you for having me on your show. I would say I found it because I was like just about every other American I've ever known in my life, growing up in a family who ate for taste, not for health. Just living, trying to be a good citizen, not really prioritizing health. And so when I was a child, and my sister as well, we had a lot of throat infections and we didn't know why. We just would go to the pediatrician or the family physician. And what do you do when you have an infection? You leave with your prescription of some antibiotic and you don't even question it, right? You just take it as, oh, well, that's what you're supposed to do. But doing that over a period of time, over years, and unfortunately, the first couple of decades of my life, I realized at some point along my journey, and this was really when I started studying the body, studying physiology, and learning about how the body works, that's actually a very bad thing to do. Like, yes, if you are infected with something, very serious that it is of bacterial origin that may be life-threatening, that's probably a good reason that you'd want to take an antibiotic. But if you're just going into your pediatrician's office because you got a little sore throat and you didn't even get your throat cultured, so you don't know if it was viral or bacterial or maybe neither, but you take an antibiotic anyway, man, that is bad news for your gut over time. I mean, you are wrecking yourself. You are wrecking your gut. You are wrecking your immune system. You are doing damage to yourself, which most people don't even understand. So I had to kind of do a retrospective analysis of my life and, why I was this kid that got so many infections and then later having GI issues and other problems. And I had to search for the origin of all of this. And it really went back to my history as, again, having these throat infections and then being over medicated with these antibiotics, possibly a little bit vaccine injured. That's a little bit speculative. Fortunately, I was born in an era of, the recommendation was 5, not 80, as it has been up until just recently. Thankfully, the DHHS is doing something about that now. But yes, I definitely, I had to find it. I had to search for the answers, and the answers ultimately were found in nutrition. It had nothing to do with medicine. And, I don't know about you, but like we throw around this word healthcare all the time in our country. We don't have a healthcare system. We have a chronic disease management system. And so if you're not caring for your health every single day, which is what, again, most people are not doing, then this is the reason we have all of these epidemics of chronic disease today, be it heart disease, cancer, neurodegeneration, diabetes, obesity, depression, you name it. It's just a massive list now. And it all traces back to nutrition. Nutrition is the fundamental, foundational aspect of our lives. It's not medicine. And this goes all the way back to the Flexner report that was published in the early 20th century, funded by Rockefeller. He wanted to basically get rid of natural treatments. And he was, of course, the king of petroleum back in those days. And so what did they do? They figured out how to make medicines out of petroleum. And this was the whole rise of, synthetics and chemicals that we've been dumping into our body now for over 100 years as a population. And look where we are today. We're the richest country in the world, and we're arguably the sickest country in the world. So if you have trauma, if you have an accident, you're broken, you're, bleeding to death, you need to be stabilized. I would argue the United States is as good as any country to be in when trauma happens to you. But when it comes to health care, forget it. We're the worst. We are, as far as first world countries, we are at the bottom of the list. We even have other countries that are second and third world countries in terms of things like infant mortality, quality of life, longevity, all these other indicators that smart people look at to say, well, hey, this country's in good shape, this one not so much. So why are we dealing with all these problems when we're the wealthiest country and we have all of this abundance, and yet our average American is so sick? And so this is where, for me, I've taken the power of health and wellness to myself and to my family and anybody who will listen to me. And you can have that power. You don't have to give it away to somebody in a white lab coat who may not have any idea about nutrition or health or exercise, may be very knowledgeable about writing prescriptions for drugs, cutting on you, prescribing or administering radiation or chemotherapy, signing a death certificate, all these things that that physicians are allowed to do legally. But when it actually comes to caring for your health, the prescription for health with nutrition, as Hippocrates, the founder of modern medicine, said, let food be thy medicine. Where in the world does that mantra fit into the average physician's life today? It doesn't. I mean, the average physician has no training in nutrition. Again, DHHS is trying to do something about that, mandating that all medical schools have to teach nutrition. But we're far from that. And I've taught medical students when I was previously full-time in academics, and we actually had at one time a little bit of an emphasis on nutrition at the University of Miami. Right now, there's very little of it because the program we had, the funding dried up, and there's just not a great emphasis in training future doctors, future physicians, and what it means to eat well, and basic principles of nutrition, basic principles about exercise, the things, again, that are truly fundamental and foundational. We ought to look at those things as the foundation, and then medicine is like your last gasp alternative. If nothing else works, which I don't even subscribe to that notion, but medicine ought to be the alternative, not nutrition and dietary supplements and exercise. The areas where I've spent my career, those should be the foundation. And then again, medicine should be the alternative. But we have big pharma that's, corrupted our government with all of this lobbying and all these laws that are in place to benefit these drug companies. I mean, it's just, I don't know how many rabbit holes you'd like to go down in this conversation, but I mean, if you get me on my soapbox, I may not stop for an hour or two. So I don't want to do that.
There are a few threads I want to pull there, and perhaps we can revisit,
Sure.
But I want to start with you. You talked about being ill as a child, and you mentioned that seizing the power of health, of your own nutrition. What did you change to improve your own nutrition to overcome the hill that you were dealing with, getting sick all the time? And through that, what does that tell you about what we all need to do?
I'm glad you asked me that, because I was hoping we would address this topic at least a little bit. So again, and you can tell I have a bit of a Southern accent, although it's not as twangy as it used to be. But growing up in the South, I ate a very typical Southern diet of a lot of animal food, a lot of fried food, a lot of dairy. We still ate lots of fruits and vegetables as well, but a very heavy animal food-based diet. My dad didn't think a meal was a meal without a piece of beef of some type, a glass of milk, and a piece of bread. It could have anything else with it, but he needed those three components to make it what he thought was a true meal. So when I was doing this sort of evaluation of myself and, where I was and how I came to this point, I was introduced. It's hard to believe this has been over 25 years ago. This is maybe about 28 years ago, actually. A friend of mine introduced me to a website called notmilk.com. And unfortunately, Robert Cohen, the guy who runs that website, he used to have a listserv that he put out information every day. I guess he got burned out or, wanted to do other things in life. But my friend introduced me to Robert's website, and I started reading all the information. And I was still early in my scientific career at that point. I mean, I was still just really getting started in my own scientific career. So this was really more of a personal interest, but having enough knowledge about how science is conducted and reading peer-reviewed articles and that sort of thing. And James, it blew me away. I mean, I started reading all of this stuff.
Oh, I just lost John. Let me bring him back.
No,
Are you back, John?
I'm here.
Yeah,
Can you hear-
I lost your photo. Don't see your.
Oh, here
There
we
you
go.
go. You're
Wow,
back.
what happened?
I'm
It
not
was
sure.
like a glitch or something. Could you still hear me? Or
For a second I couldn't, and then I saw you re-adding yourself.
so I'll just back up to that one statement. I started reading all of these, actually, just to not violate copyright issues with journals. Robert didn't have like, PDF articles on his website. He just had like summary statements of each article. And then it was up to me to like go actually read, the whole article. But when I started doing this, James, it blew my mind because it was like the 180-degree opposite message that the dairy industry has historically told us, with all this creative marketing and advertising, like the milk mustache,
Got milk.
the got milk commercials, right? All these things that celebrities and athletes and all these other people have taken part in. And I mean, it was just such an eye opener for me because the scientific literature, when you read all this stuff about the problems associated with human beings drinking cow's breast fluid, it will just blow your mind. And this isn't like a handful of papers. This is literally now, I mean, again, this was close to 30 years ago. So now fast forward today, we're talking thousands of scientific articles. I mean, even just looking at it from an environmental, biological justification, why in the world are we as humans drinking the breast fluid of another mammal as adults? No other mammal in the mammal kingdom does that. So why are we doing it? There's no justification for that. And so that for me was such a moment in my life where I started thinking, wow, I've been drinking milk, eating cheese, ice cream, yogurt, all these things, all these years. Why have I been doing that? And then as I started leading down this, or going down this path about, well, wait a minute, I thought this was healthy for me, but now I'm reading all this information that suggests something completely differently. And so it was really at that point that I said, okay, I'm done with dairy. Like, I'm not drinking this stuff anymore. And so I made a very conscious decision to stop using dairy food, whether it was milk or cheese or yogurt or whatever. And literally within not even a week, I had such a tremendous change in the way my bowel worked. And I don't necessarily need to get too personal with you and your listeners, but let's just say I thought constipation was the normal, where it took me 30 to 60 minutes to do my business. And I just thought that was normal. I had no idea that that's not the way your gut is supposed to work. And then once I cut the dairy out, man, it was like, I'm telling you, within a week, it was such a dramatic change. I couldn't believe it. You go do your business and within a couple of minutes, you're done. And it happened that rapidly for me. So that was very powerful for my mind to look at something I had been doing and just accepting the norm, if you will, or just that's what everybody's supposed to do. But wait a minute, what if that's not what we're supposed to do? So for me, that was a huge moment. And then it just took me one step further. Once I cut dairy out, then I started looking at everything else that I was consuming, whether it was coming from an animal or a plant. And I just made a very conscious decision over about a year period to completely eliminate eating any tissue or substance from animal origin. And so here I am today, 27 years, I've been eating a whole food, plant-based diet, and I've never looked back. I mean, I have people ask me all the time, the common questions: where do you get your protein? What about vitamin B12? What about iron? I mean, there are lots of questions that, people raise, but I can easily address those. And I consider myself to be one of the healthiest people that I know, regardless of age. I still have just an incredible functional physical capacity, and I feel great every day. So there's no issue with eating a plant-based diet. Some people think, oh, you can't get enough protein from plants. That's nonsense. That's not true. But for me, I don't really, I don't have a one-on-one coaching or consulting business per se. Sometimes I will get people who ask me certain things like this type of nature that we will have this conversation. but I'm really, focused on the company that I've started since leaving academics based on my research that if you are interested in talking about. But on a personal level, nutrition for me is absolutely your number one modifiable behavior to either improve your risk of not getting these chronic diseases that are killing us or contributing to a greater risk of the same things. And it's all about nutrition for me. I mean, certainly exercise is important. Obviously, you don't want to use tobacco. Alcohol has really taken a major black eye over the last few years with the research coming out, linking even just a little bit of alcohol consumption with different forms of cancer. And of course, managing your stress and, trying to do your best to not get exposed to all these radiation pollutants and other chemical exposures and whatnot. So there are a whole host of things that obviously go into being healthy and trying to achieve optimal health. But for me, fundamentally, foundationally, nutrition is number one.
To your milk point, I've found a similar thing in my life, honestly, in that I have dealt with congestion basically since I was a kid, just chronic congestion. And I cut out most milk. And I'd still do some cheese. I'll do ice cream here or there. But I used to drink milk out of the carton and drink glasses of milk because, as you alluded to, that's what we were taught to do. That was with every lunch. Every public school lunch was a carton of milk.
You and me both.
And my congestion dropped. And it makes me wonder, why are we so captive? Oh, captive, I guess is that the right term? I'll roll with it. I'll call it captive. All right, because it seems like I think you alluded to a couple things, whether it was the Rockefellers earlier, or and obviously the milk industry. It seems like these lobbies have this outsized influence on how we define, especially things like nutrition. And you would think that we wouldn't lean on lobbies to make that kind of decision, but we do. And there's infinite amount of examples of it. Some you've mentioned earlier. Do you have a thought of how we ended up in this direction?
I do. And may I tell you why you were having that congestion? I can tell you physiologically.
Sure.
So milk contains a protein called beta casomorphine. And this particular protein causes histamine to be released every time we consume it. And so every time we consume milk or cheese or yogurt or whatever, you're taking in that protein and it's causing a histamine release, which is causing that congestion. So that's a tremendous response. And that same protein was causing me to be constipated. That's exactly why people have all of these dairy issues. And, people get focused on lactose intolerance. Certainly that's an issue, but lactose pales in comparison to all these proteins and hormones that are in milk. I mean, those are the things that are driving the obesity and cancer and diabetes and heart disease. Yes, lactose intolerance is no fun if you're having gas and upset stomach from stuff like that, but that issue pales in comparison to the others. Now, as far as, where we are today and how we got here, unfortunately, I would attribute a lot of our current environment all the way back to what Rockefeller did. I mean, the guy, I don't know, was he just like one of the most evil people who ever lived? It's just crazy that a guy could basically buy off an entire industry, the American Medical Association at that time, and then just basically turn it on its heels. And so from that point in the early 20th century to today, we've had just this increasing industry influence. I mean, and then if you think about what's happening right now, and it's actually a good timing for our conversation because the government just released its updated dietary guidelines, which I find to be a bit disappointing. I mean, on the one hand, I'm glad that they're promoting this message of eat real food, but when you put beef and dairy at the top of the list of this real food, to me, they're ignoring so much science out there that I just mentioned related to, again, the two primary killers of Americans, heart disease and cancer. You can look at so much research that shows if you eat a lot of beef and dairy all the time, that's exactly what you're setting yourself up for. So as much as RFK ran on this platform for president as being, the guy who was going to come in and just completely eviscerate all of these industry grips that they have on the government, that to me was like, wow, wait a minute. I thought you were the guy that was kind of separating yourself from all of this. So now it makes me wonder what was going on in these meetings when they came up with these new guidelines. But I think it's just, we have to be, I mean, how is it that we have allowed ourselves to have this corporate capture that RFK has been talking about for the last few years? I wish I understood that better on the political side. I hate to sound so conspiracy theorist about it, but it's like you have big pharma as, arguably one of the most important industries for many reasons in our country in terms of its total revenue and the way it just permeates our entire society. And so if big pharma, and especially the companies that are public, if they don't have customers, well, they don't have business, right? So it's kind of like what Bill Maher said I think about 15 or 20 years ago when Obama and Hillary were running against each other. And Bill Maher made this comment on his program one night about big pharma doesn't want dead people. Big pharma doesn't want healthy people. All the money is in alive people that are impaired to some degree so that they're lifetime customers, basically. And that, again, that was, however long ago that was that Clinton and Obama were sparring with each other. So it's, I think, going on about 20 years ago.
Yeah, just about.
And it's only gotten worse, right? Like it's not even any better. So unfortunately, we have this built-in system of feeding us all of this food-like substances, as Michael Pollan said in one of his books, and then just this domination of big pharma of our medical system, and then what money is made by hospitals and insurance companies and all these other ancillary treatment organizations. It's just, to me, it's just the system is sick all the way down to the individual. And that's why one of my continuous messages to people is, please don't give away your power. Take your own health as your top priority along with your time. We can't do anything about the passage of our time in our lives, but we can do so much about our health. And it's not about, I know there are issues with people that live in, as they refer to them, as food deserts, and maybe they don't have, a park or a gym where they're close to that they can exercise. But still, like when you think of certain foods, somebody did a comparison not too long ago. This was about 10 years ago. Like an average 24-hour day eating fast food or eating, basically not very healthy choices was almost like no difference in cost compared to eating a whole food plant-based diet where you're actually getting good quality nutrition. So, a lot of people want to make this argument about cost all the time, but there's actually research showing that's not true either. But it requires effort. You have to go to the farmer's market. You have to go to the grocery store. You have to go somewhere and actually buy stuff that looks like food as it came from Mother Nature, not just depending on a fast food restaurant to give you something out of a drive-through that has no relationship to what it looked like in nature. So it requires effort. And that's where also, for me, I don't know about you, but for me, it's very sad when I look at, so many folks today who just don't, like their motivation's just not there. They just, health is not even on their top 10 list of priorities. So how do you even get somebody like that to acknowledge and recognize the value of going to the grocery store and actually shopping for your food as opposed to driving through the drive-through every day? There's just so many competing issues with this. It's just unbelievable. It's almost like this was not by accident. In other words, like, again, I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, crazy person, but this almost just doesn't seem accidental. Like, even taking it to like the political level of, all these corporate takeovers of the family farm. Like, you've heard of so many stories of, individual farmers, they've been driven out of business because they couldn't afford the seed anymore because Monsanto basically took over the entire seed stock of all American farmers. And so
they copyrighted them.
Exactly. Like, they've literally patented Mother Nature. That shouldn't even be allowed. Like, how did that happen? So there are just so many different angles to this that it just doesn't, to me, it doesn't seem accidental. And that's where we have to take this in our own hands as much as possible and do something about it. And it really is about every single one of us. I mean, when you think about our population today, we're spending $5 trillion in this throwaway broken system. That's monopoly money. It's like infinity money. It doesn't even compute. So it really requires each one of us, regardless of what the mandates are from the government. Nobody's going to show up to your doorstep and say, okay, here, it's time for you to eat your broccoli today. We all have to do it. We all have to join in. I mean, we only have one ship, and we're all going to go down on the same ship if we don't reverse this thing.
I could go a million different places here.
I know. I'm telling you, I'm on my soapbox.
I'm enjoying this soapbox ride.
You may have to bring me back.
Oh, you're coming back. But I want to go to RFK Jr. because Secretary of Health and Human Services, correct?
Yes.
And you mentioned his choice. I'm sure it wasn't just him. Right. But he is leading the group that is the umbrella that made this decision, beef and milk, toward the top of the heap when it comes to nutritional guidelines. What should be there?
Without question, it should be more focused on plants. They've got
which plants?
Greens. I mean, greens to me are the healthiest foods we can eat. Nuts, seeds, beans, legumes, all of those are rich in protein. The other aggravating thing to me that they're promoting in these new guidelines is this emphasis on protein. James, you and I could go to any hospital in the United States right now. I don't care if it's in Rochester or Miami or Wichita, Kansas, or Dallas or LA or wherever. We could go to any inpatient unit in a hospital right now. If there was one person in there due to protein deficiency, I would be shocked. I mean, the average American is already overdosing on too much protein. So where in the world, unless you're an elderly person, unless you've been severely burned all over your body, unless you have some other kind of wasting disease like a cancer or HIV or something, I mean, or actually, I should take it even one step further. If you're a competitive athlete, bodybuilder, I mean, these are extreme examples. These are the folks that probably need more protein than the recommendation. But this idea that they've now doubled the protein recommendation on top of pushing beef and dairy as real food, I don't know. To me, that is just, man, that's giving people the wrong message. There's just too much science. There is a dermatologist in Germany by the name of Bodo Melnick. It's a fascinating name. I've never seen a picture of the guy, but I do know he's a man. And he has been writing review articles about dairy. And I guess being a dermatologist, probably his interest was initially due to, skin issues. If this guy was an American, I guarantee you he would already have been found dead by suicide of 5 gunshot wounds, because he has just hammered all of the problems associated with consuming dairy as adult humans. I mean, he just has been relentless in like at least about 8 or 10 articles I've read, and they are fascinating. I mean, talk about biochemistry and genetics and epigenetics and all these other just incredible breakdowns that this man has made and his co-authors. And so, again, like, why in the world they're now promoting these foods? I mean, even beef, back in 2015, the WHO, if you can if back then, I don't know how much credibility the WHO had compared to now. It obviously has none now, but I mean, back then they reviewed over 800 articles on beef, and they determined that it was at least likely carcinogenic for human consumption. That was 11 years ago, and it's only gotten worse since then. There's nothing better to suggest that should be, oh well, no, we made a mistake. No, that was based on 800 articles over a decade ago. So we should be focused on plants. And oh, by the way, don't even ignore the environmental implications about this. I mean, that's the other interesting thing about RFK's journey. He spent all of these years with the fighting corporations for polluting the rivers across the country, especially in New York. And I think they're called the River Keepers. I forget his organization that they created out of that. So he's very much into protecting the environment, making sure that polluters are held accountable. Well, guess what? When you raise animals, primarily cows, for food purposes, whether it's dairy or their meat, man, you are spending so much more water, so much more air, so much more soil, all of these environmental inputs that it takes to raise a cow ultimately for food consumption purposes, compared to raising potatoes or beans or rice or all of these other foods. So I mean, there are lots of reasons why we need to dramatically shift to more of a plant-based focus, as opposed to just consuming all of this meat. I mean, look at what's happened to the Amazon. That's a very interesting and sad story about how so much of the Amazon has been chopped down to raise cattle because of the growing demand for beef across the world. So I don't know. To me, again, real food is certainly a nice message, but if your real food is beef and a glass of milk, I mean, to me, that's not what I would have been voting for if I had any involvement in this committee.
Well, all this sort of ties into this grand picture that I get here, where nutritional guidelines have been bad for a long time. You're not the only one saying it. There's a lot of not just conjecture, a lot of experts, a lot of people, nutritionists, including ones I've used personally myself, who like some of it's good, but like that's not the healthiest way to live. Yet it was the not law of the land necessarily, but the guiding light of how we were supposed to feed our children, ourselves, for a long time. Then on top of that, you got to this earlier when you were talking about sort of, no one has a protein deficiency. Like, and in fact, most of us we're increasingly unhealthy. And personally, like, it's something I've dealt with. I mean, look, I lost 100 pounds at one point. And I'm still, it's a battle for me, And I think there's much more Americans like me than like you. You've found a way to sort of conquer this through a whole food, plant-based diet. And then there's a whole lot of people like me who are sort of in the midst of the battle, some degree of the battle, whether they've given up and surrendered or they're fighting every day. Right?
Right.
And then we see Charles Barkley. Then we see Serena Williams. And we see Wegovy and Ozempic.
I know.
And we see these options that could help us along the way. And it seems like something we should explore, something we should at least consider. What have you learned about these so far?
Well, let me just say, when I saw that Serena Williams commercial for the first time, I was so disappointed. I mean, that lady's she's never been overweight. Yeah, she's a big woman, but she's not like, obese. I mean, why is she even promoting that? Maybe you could say Barkley. He obviously was known as the round mound of rebound.
Yeah.
So, Charles has had, I'm sure he's had his issues with weight over his life, but Williams, I totally didn't understand her. I just didn't understand where that came from. But so I don't know, James. I mean, this is probably more of a personal opinion or philosophy as opposed to, a purely scientific one. But I just look at, yes, we have 75, 80% of Americans are somewhere between overweight and obese. We have roughly probably the same number, 80% of Americans are now totally sedentary, meaning they don't do anything physically all day. They're just like you and me right now, sitting around in a building doing whatever they do for a living or whatever. And so we've become the victim of our own worst convenient devices over the last at least half century, right? Certainly probably since the Green Revolution in the 1960s. So here we are today. We have all these folks that are struggling, as you just said, with trying to get to a healthy weight. And now we have this new, it's now the latest, greatest offering from Big Pharma, this GLP-1 phenomenon. Well, let's just think about this for a second. First of all, a drug cannot be classified as a drug without having a toxic level. Like that's a kind of FDA approval 101. A company has to demonstrate, it's called the LD50. It's a dose that will kill 50% of the population that it's given to. And that's not in humans, of course, that's in mice or rats or rabbits or monkeys or, some other animal population that they have to test within that population to show, okay, this is a toxic level. And then that level gets applied or translated to humans that you'd say, okay, for every gram of this material per kilogram of body weight, we can kind of guess that would be a level where you would not want to give this to a human because you'd have a 50% risk of actually dying. So that's a very important step that FDA requires drug companies to prove as they go through this process. So we already know, and even anything, over the counter, that also is true. It's not just prescription, it's even anything over the counter. It has to have, a toxic level to be classified as any type of drug. So number one, you're going to have some kind of a side effect. So what do we know about this so far? Well, since the first GLP-1 was approved in 2014 for weight loss, so we're only talking roughly a decade of consumer activity, we know the primary one, of course, is all of these GI issues. People are having this sort of stomach paralysis. And what does GLP-1 do? This is a peptide that causes you to release insulin. So as part of your metabolic process, you eat a meal and your body is doing things with it. You're secreting insulin to handle this load of nutrition or nutrients that came into your system to metabolize them. So you're increasing your insulin response. You're slowing down the digestive response. So hopefully that's helping people not to overeat, because as we know, a lot of people, they're hungry, and then what do? You just throw it in really fast and you completely bypass the mechanism to say, hey, wait a minute, you're already full, stop eating. And so that's obviously important for people. But, if you're having all of these problems related to that, like this, I've read lots of reports of actual stomach paralysis, diarrhea, constant indigestion, bloating, all these other issues. So that's obviously a very important side effect going forward to monitor. Number two, we have muscle loss. Yes, it's causing you to lose weight, but if you're losing your most important metabolic functional machine, which is your skeletal muscle, man, that's bad news. I mean, sarcopenia is usually in the realm of elderly people. Well, now you're going to have all of these people in their 20s and 30s and 40s taking these drugs, and now they're losing muscle mass. Well, what happens to those folks, especially as they go through the life, the process of living and getting into older age? Muscular strength is one of the most important indicators of lifespan and longevity.
Let's stop there for a moment.
Sure.
Muscle loss. How does that? I know if you don't use your muscles, they atrophy.
Correct.
What do we know of does it speed up that process? Or does it
That's apparently what it's doing, because you're consuming fewer calories, and it's causing this insulinemic response, this hyperinsulinemic response. So apparently it's almost like your body is consuming itself. And so you're not just losing the fat tissue, you're also losing the muscular tissue, which again is just horrific news. I mean, if it was the situation where these drugs were designed just to simply cause you to lose fat, like almost like a a surgery for liposuction, where you just have the the fat tissue sucked out. If it was a drug that could do that, wow, what an incredible drug. But unfortunately, it's not doing that. It's causing you to lose fat and muscle. So it's a very, very significant problem.
And these are different drugs. I mean, do the different ones have are they all across the board causing things like the GI symptoms and the atrophying muscles, or are some worse than the others?
So from what I don't claim to be an expert in all these different drugs within this class, but from what the research I have read so far, they are all doing it to some degree.
Hmm.
Some may be worse than others, but I'm not even sure how many are approved under this class of drugs at this point. I know that one of them just recently got approved as an oral, so that way you don't have to continue injecting it. And I think that just happened this month. I think it's just now coming out as an oral, or maybe in February. But yes, unfortunately, this entire class of drugs causes you to have all of these GI issues, and then all this problem with losing muscle. And then the other more recent phenomenon I've read about is actually visual problems. There have been reports of some people having visual loss. So imagine you're taking this drug to try to lose weight, and then suddenly you lose your eyesight. I mean, my goodness, that's, to me, being blind would be one of the worst fates in life. So, and I don't think, again, just having this decade period of time where they've been on the market, I think we're still really early in the game. I mean, I just don't know, how many drugs, I don't claim to be an expert in pharmacology over, the last century. I don't know how many drugs have been pulled off the market from different side effects that ultimately started killing people. But I mean, certainly there are classes of drugs that have had these examples, like Rinvic. That was a serotonin receptor weight loss drug. It was approved in 2012. And then in 2020, it was pulled from the market because it was shown to have an elevated risk of colorectal cancer. And I think several other different cancers as well. So are we in a phase right now where maybe there are going to be other very serious side effects that rear their ugly heads that we're kind of not even aware of yet, because of just, the newness? And I mean, it clearly is getting a lot of hype right now. So imagine as more people start taking this class of drug, it's potentially only going to be worse. And then the other final comment I would make about side effects is that there is this nasty thing called polypharmacy. So what does that mean? So polypharmacy, and unfortunately, as we both know, there are, I don't know what the average American, how many drugs the average American is taking now, but it's at least a handful. And there's no financial incentive. FDA does not require any drug company to say, okay, you're going down this path for this GLP-1 drug, but we must insist that at the same time you're testing this for its effects, you've got to add in antidepressants, antihypertensives, anti-lipid, all these other different drugs that are so commonly taken now. So imagine you're already taking 3 or 4 drugs, and then you decide to take Ozempic on top of it. What in the world is all of that polypharmacy doing to you? We have no idea. We literally have no idea. And iatrogenic effects, or medical causes or medical mistakes, they're considered to be the third leading cause of death. I might argue that it's actually even the number one cause of death, simply because how poorly people are evaluated at the time of death. Most people don't go through, their family doesn't have their loved one have an autopsy. So, medical records can be iffy. But I know my grandmother is a great example. I mean, that poor soul died with taking 15, the day my grandmother died, my dad's mother, she was on 15 different medications.
Wow.
That was wrong. I mean, that's terrible communication at best and medical malpractice at worst. because she would just go to one specialist after another to deal with this or that. And they'd say, oh, here, Mrs. Lewis, just take this. And, and then at the end of her life, she's on 15 drugs and died of heart failure.
It's an interesting point you bring up that I hadn't really heard before, but it makes, the more I think about it, the stronger the idea becomes for me that we don't know how drugs interact with each other.
No clue.
Even before you even get to things like Ozempic and Wegovy, just like broadly, if you are on a drug, I would hope that your doctor would look at, hey, this is a list of other drugs you're on, and if there is risk, they'd bring it up. But we don't even know what it's. If you're mixing in 3, 4, 5, you mentioned 15 in that really extreme case, but if a lot of people are on 6 drugs and they're mixing them in all at once, we don't know what kind of punch that packs.
That's right.
So it makes me wonder about, something like Ozempic or Wegovy coming into the marketplace, it being a different type of drug too, not a typical drug. I believe It's a biologic.
Correct.
And it's being brought into the marketplace, and knowing and what kind of effects that biologics have on other drugs. I don't expect you to know that answer. It's one of the things that runs through my head as I sort of process all this at once, as we seem to be pounding ourselves with just fistful of pharmaceuticals.
We are. And to your point, peptides in general right now, that's another rage, my goodness, just go to social media and all these different so-called experts on peptide use. They're telling people to take, this for your joint pain, and this for your testosterone level, and this for your libido, and this and that. It's like crazy. Like, it's just all of this, information about peptides is just out of control at the moment. I'm not suggesting people are breaking the law, but you listen to some of these folks talk about these things and you think, well, wait a minute, what, show me the clinical trials, show me the publications. Where are the actual data? Like, where do the data lie in being able to make all these claims? To me, this isn't a whole lot different. I didn't mention to you that prior to getting into a health focus in nutrition, my focus just prior to that, after high school and through my undergrad days, I got into drug-free competitive bodybuilding.
Oh.
And I ended up competing in bodybuilding for a few years. I knew I was not willing to take drugs. I was never going to make a living at it. And I just, I had much more of a focus on other things intellectually, as opposed to getting up on a stage in a bikini and flexing for people. So that pursuit didn't last too long. But nonetheless, I was surrounded by a lot of guys who were taking drugs at that time.
I would assume all of them.
Just about just about all of them, exactly. And so you make a great point about a biologic. People were taking, back in those days in the 90s, these were more or less synthetic steroids, but certainly, look at bioidentical hormone replacement. That's another interesting topic that's getting more attention. So, James, to me, the bottom line is we don't know. Like, I think to make such definitive statements about, well, taking this and taking that, and it's the way to optimize your health. How do you know? We just don't have enough data to suggest that all these things are so incredibly safe. But I do stand on my original statement about any drug that's been approved by the FDA, it has to have a toxicity level. Do these peptides and maybe some of these other biologics have a toxicity level? I don't know. Like, I don't know. Mm-hmm. To me, that's a gray area. Like, they're not dietary supplements. They're not drugs. There's something sort of in between. And then where do they lie, or where do they, we glitched again. Sorry
I can
about
hear
that.
you. I can hear you. Yes,
Sorry, I
absolutely.
glitched on my end. And so
No
then,
worries.
where does that leave us in terms of trying to help people be healthy, and especially folks that are struggling with either their weight, or maybe they're type 2 diabetic, or they have something else they're dealing with that they're trying to address, but unfortunately, from the conventional perspective, they're not getting a lot of help.
Are these drugs under the same amount of scrutiny as your typical drug?
I don't think they are at the moment. Do you? I mean, you can't turn on the news or the TV for more than an hour or two, and you've already seen the commercial for them 3 or 4 times. Right now, it's just all sunshine and flowers. Like
Mhm.
nobody's talking about losing muscle and having a paralyzed stomach and going blind. They're just talking about, oh, you're going to lose weight and you're going to feel better, and it's just all sunshine and flowers right now. I don't think enough bad publicity is reaching the average consumer. And oh, by the way, I just read an article not even 2 days ago. This was after Jeff and I had this conversation about this topic. So this was a study that was just published in Europe. I forget if it was the UK or which other country, but it was looking at what happens when people go off the drug. So
Hmm.
I'm sure people, eventually you get tired of shooting yourself with a needle if you're not used to doing that. Well, guess what? It's exactly the same phenomenon as all the other weight loss research. You stop taking these drugs over time, you put the weight back on, and you're not putting back muscle, right? I mean, you've lost this really precious muscle. The only way you're going to gain that back is to start weight training, which, most women, they're freaked out about weight training because they think they're going to lose their femininity and, get too muscular looking and all those things. But yes, you put the weight back on over time, just like if you went on a diet and went hypocaloric or isocaloric and then stopped, and then you put the weight back on. So it's actually no different from a behavioral perspective than this drug perspective.
Hmm. So there's an immediate, not maybe not immediate, but there's a bounce back.
There's definitely a bounce back. And my thing is, like when you were talking about Charles and Serena and their involvement in this and promoting it, my thing is like, okay, let's say you are in that case where you just feel like this is the only way for you. Like you just feel like this is it. Like your mind is made up. Don't convince you with facts otherwise. Like this is how you're going to do it. But if you do not address your behavior along with it, as we know, nobody is born overweight or obese. Like this takes years, if not decades, to end up in that shape. And I don't know about you. Like I look at so many people I went to high school with, up until at least from my era, we had gym, we had PE every day, we had actual physical activity as part of the regular curriculum. So I graduated with high school with a bunch of skinny people. I mean, I didn't have a lot of heavy people. I mean, there were a few, but those were like the exception, not the norm. And then like what happened to them, 10, 20 years later? And it's like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe what happened to them when they stopped having daily activity, when they started eating more and all these things. So if you are in that condition today and you think this drug is your savior, it's it's the thing that you really need, you still have to address your behaviors along with it, because otherwise at some point, if you do stop taking the drug, it's going to be like the yo-yo phenomenon. You're going to go back to where you were at some point. So you still have to address your behavior. This isn't an excuse to say, okay, well, I can take this drug and I'll still eat Twinkies and McDonald's every day and I'll never exercise. No, this is actually as part of an overall plan to rebalance and restore and to get back to something that probably most people did as children in their young adult days, and then they just completely ignored as life got away from them, and now here they are trying to correct something. So for me, this is so much about behavior correction as it is about adding one other simple behavior on top of whatever else you're doing.
When did you graduate high school, John?
1986. I'm
I
coming up on,
graduated in 2002.
this is my 40th year. It's going to be hard to believe.
Uh, I'm what? I've just passed 20. I'm approaching 25. All right. I went to school And that statement you made there really jumped out at me because there were a bunch of us that were very overweight.
Mm.
It's not as extreme as it is now, but
It was shifting.
it was already shifting. It may be oversimplifying it, but what happened?
Goodness. Well, I mean, going back to RFK for a minute, he's pretty focused on 1989, and that was a big shift in the vaccine schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Just a dramatic increase in giving our children all these vaccines from birth up until 16, 17.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, God only knows. I mean, you take one vaccine and you say, okay, what are the side effects of it? And now you give a baby just, 10, 20 in a very short period of time. Oh my God, what in the world are all the effects going on in combination? But I think the continued dominance of fast food, I mean, it obviously started way before the 80s, but certainly as it continued growing in popularity, the internet, I mean, from your era, you were already kind of getting into the internet. I can remember it. Like I can remember like in 1994 having an AOL account and dialing up and, listening to the modem. I mean, talk about what a
Yeah.
weird, experience that was to today. But all this technology that we now have, from my generation to yours and now to today, I mean, it just has shifted so dramatically. And the continued conveniences and the continued additives into whether they're sweeteners or preservatives or all this other stuff that we put into the food supply, colors, dyes. I mean, just all this stuff that has nothing to do with health, but it's all about making things tastier and cheaper and, quite frankly, more addictive.
Yeah, I want to pull a couple of those if you have some more time to
How
roll
much?
with me.
How long did you want to go today?
If you could go maybe another 20, that'd be good.
Okay, let's do it.
All right, just to pull on some of those
Sure.
pieces there because I think they're really interesting, and I'll say it again. If you want to, please let's continue this. I'll start with the vaccines. I don't know. I'm no expert on vaccines and the volume of vaccines that we take and not take, but that number seems like a clear jump, and it seems like a line of demarcation in the American level of health.
Yes.
I'm not sure if it's causation or correlation. Obviously, you've mentioned several other pieces, whether it is more dyes in our food, and sort of this behavioral change. I wrote down a bunch of notes that you mentioned earlier, where you talked about eating for taste, not for health, and while you were growing up, that became the norm.
Exactly.
But definitely the jump in levels of vaccine, it's you can't ignore it. It did happen.
No.
Any sense from your research what level of how should we go about figuring out how many we should be taking? I would imagine we should be taking some. Any sense of how many we should be taking?
James, that's a great question. I mean, my wife and I have 2 young children, and just as full disclosure, we have not injected them with anything.
None.
0.
Wow.
0.
How old are they?
Our daughter will be 6 in March, and our son is he's almost 15 months.
Any, especially with the older one,
They're both healthy as horses.
Wow.
Cognitively, their brains are off the chart. Even my mother, as I mentioned, my dad died quite a few years ago, but and mom lives with us, and she comments all the time, wow, I cannot believe how smart your kids are. Like, it's just, their brains are on another level of awareness and understanding and comprehension. It's pretty incredible. And I'm not trying to brag or anything because they're my own children, but it's impressive how smart they are. And what's interesting for me is, becoming a parent later in life is I kind of went through, before becoming a parent, I kind of went through life not really paying that much of attention to children. I have a nephew, I have a niece, but I didn't grow up too much with them because I'm in Miami, they're in Tennessee, so I didn't have a whole lot of experience with them as babies and toddlers. But since becoming a parent, I have become so much more aware of the average child's demeanor, action, whether they can clue in on things, pick up on things. It's really an eye opener when you look at a child that acts normally, and then you look at a child, I mean, forget autism, that's a whole different animal, but even just the kids that are so scattered, they have this almost severe level of ADHD that it's like, wow, like this poor child is just on another level. And then you start doing a little homework, or you start asking questions, and you discover that the child has had, multiple vaccines. And then you say, well, is that a surprise? I mean, is that truly a surprise that this is the end result? I mean, did you hear about that Henry Ford study? It's called the Inconvenient documentary. I would highly encourage you to check it out.
The Inconvenient documentary.
Yes, it's about the Henry Ford study. So the lead investigator of that study did not publish it because he knew if he did, he would be fired, or he would lose his career. So James, they have this, I think it's based on something like 18,000 children. And the ridiculous statistics are just, I mean, it's not even mind-boggling. It's actually sad. It's enough, if you read it, it's enough to make you cry, because the vaccinated children versus the unvaccinated children, the rates of everything that we're dealing with today are through the roof in all the vaccinated children. And then in the unvaccinated, they have almost nothing. It's sad. I mean, I'm getting chill bumps even just thinking about it when you read that information and you watch this video, and it's just, oh man, it just pulls your heart to think about this. So when you ask me, should we be vaccinated? I mean, I didn't take any COVID shots. My mother did not. My wife did not. We certainly did not give any of those to our children. For me, like I very much view natural immunity as something that is so brilliant and so sophisticated that, do we need a vaccine? I mean, I mentioned to you earlier, I think I have a suspicion based on my own research, I might have been a little bit vaccine injured. And that was the reason that kind of set me on this path of having all of these infections, and then throwing in all the antibiotics on top of it just kind of, duplicated it, or it made it even worse. I can't prove it. It's just what my gut tells me. But based on, again, researching different vaccines like the MMR and some of the others, this is kind of what I've been sort of led to believe about my own life. And that was a big part of the reason of saying, we're not going to inject our children with anything. We would rather let their bodies evolve naturally, let their immune systems build themselves the way Mother Nature designed them. And that's it. And, we know lots of other families who have not vaccinated their children as well. There's no incidence of autism or ADHD or allergies or all these other things that are just wrecking our society today, and these kids that we know that have not had vaccines. So we feel very confident in our decision and why we've done this. And that's it. I mean, if people question it, to me, like, one thing that I've never heard RFK acknowledge too much, but I think there are a few Congress people trying to raise this issue, is that in 1986, President Reagan signed this law, I forget the name of it, but signed it into law, that now the vaccine manufacturers have no legal liability.
Yeah.
So why is this safe and effective drug Why does it have that status? If it's so safe and if it's so effective, why do they have legal immunity for anything? I mean, to me, that is just outrageous. Like, what other industry has that? Automakers don't have that. The food companies, they don't have that. In my industry, dietary supplement companies, we certainly don't enjoy that. Like, no other industry has that. So they can basically make up the rules. There have been, as RFK has said repeatedly, there have been no placebo controlled trials on any of these vaccines, James. I mean, that's the gold standard for drugs. Why are vaccines living outside of the gold standard? They don't use a placebo as the comparison. They use another vaccine. It makes no sense. So they're comparing one vaccine to another and then saying, oh yeah, it's safe, because the rates of whatever adverse effects were basically identical. So they're using the art of manipulating statistics to say, well, there was no significant difference in outcomes of ADHD or autism or GI issues or cognitive development or whatever, because there was no significance in the statistics between two different vaccines, not from a placebo to a vaccine. That's what they should have been doing, but they're not held to that standard. And then they can put their products on the market, and it doesn't matter how many people or how many babies are injured or die or what happens. And there's no legal responsibility. James, what is our infant mortality? It's like number 33 or something. SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. That is a garbage can term for nothing. When an infant dies, is it investigated? Did they go back and say, well, wait a minute, they just had 8 vaccines yesterday, and then 2 days later, the baby died? These are the kinds of questions we should be answering. Like, why in the world does the United States rank in the 30s on infant mortality? We should be number 1. We have excellent drinking water. We don't have infections raging through our country. We have sanitation. We dispose of our garbage properly. Everybody should be eating good food. You can if you go buy it. So why in the world are our infants dying? I mean, to me, I'm almost breaking a tear here, because I'm now a father. Like, it breaks my heart when I hear people losing their children or their babies because of these, issues. 2 of my best friends from childhood have severely autistic sons, and they'll never have a girlfriend. They'll never date. They'll never have a job. They'll never do anything. It breaks my heart that I have 2 of my best friends who had this fate happen to them. And why? I mean, we shouldn't be dealing with this as a society, as a country. We're the best country in human history. We shouldn't be dealing with these things.
Which brings me to my last vaccine-related question. I have one more Ozempic-related one.
Okay.
At least in my neck of the woods, and you mentioned kids and your kids in particular. In order to go to school, you have to take them. How are you dealing with that? If you've chosen to not do this, I'm assuming you're not going to. Listening to you over the last few minutes.
So in Florida, you have religious exemption for vaccines, and many fortunately, many states have common sense application of this. I mean, to me, that's another thing. Like, why in the world do we allow a mandate like that? I mean, to me, James, you're talking about sticking something internally in yourself or your children. That, to me, is that any different than assaulting somebody with your fist? Like, how is that? I don't even understand that. I totally don't comprehend this idea of forcing people to inject themselves or their children. That just doesn't, on any level of what our country is founded on about personal freedom, that makes no sense to me. So yes, in Florida, we have the ability to have religious exemption, fortunately, and hopefully we always will. I mean, it's sad to me that California does what California does with that stuff. I mean, they just force it down people's throats. I've actually known a couple of families that left California because of that very issue. They refused to comply, and so they just moved out of state.
And just to share a bit of my perspective on this, I mean, I'm a pretty live and let live person. Hey, if you feel like you have the right to raise your family as you choose, it's the way
Exactly.
I look at the world, and it's clearly that you've come to your perspective just after much research and much thought. It's not a flippant approach.
No.
Have you gotten much pushback?
Very little, fortunately. I mean, we tend to be friendly with, relatively like-minded people who have, just like you, a common sense approach. Like, I completely agree with you. Live and let live. Hey, if you think vaccines are the greatest invention in human history, man, take every one of them. Go for it. I don't care. Like, that's your right to put in your body whatever it is that you think is appropriate for you and your children. And then, but leave me out of it. For me, it's kind of like religion. Like,
Yeah.
fortunately, we can practice whatever religion we want in the United States, but that doesn't mean that gives you the right to then, convert everybody to your own belief or your own faith. I mean, practice it for yourself and for the people that you practice it with, but that doesn't mean, that everybody else necessarily is going to agree with you. But I don't know, James, to me, like vaccine, if the whole vaccine industry is built on, first of all, this legal shield it needs to go away. I mean, they need to be held accountable when people are injured and die. And number two, the science. I mean, even though RFK, I dropped a notch or two in my view on him with the dietary guidelines, but I still, everything that he said about vaccines. I mean, let's take Anthony Fauci for a moment. I mean, that book that he wrote on Fauci, if anything he said in that book was untrue, why isn't Fauci suing him? Like, that's a no-brainer, right? Like, if you get castigated to such a degree in the public eye, your legal recourse is to go after that person. Well, RFK has not been sued by Fauci, to my knowledge. So all that information in there about what Fauci did in the HIV era, all the way up to COVID, I mean, that's a very bad person. I'm sorry, that guy is not that. He is no hero. He's nobody who should be lauded for his praises. If anything, he was like the ringleader of all this nonsense about masking and social distancing, and oh, you got to take your shot or you can't go to a restaurant, and oh, how dare you, you're not thinking of the public, blah, 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 blah. I mean, all that stuff turned out to be garbage. All him and all these other people, spewing this nonsense, that all turned out to be garbage. They should be held accountable for this. But again, until a vaccine is pulled from the market, if that's what you think is the best choice for you and your family, go for it. To me, it doesn't matter. Like, and that's the other funny thing to me about the pro-vaccine crowd. They think it's the right thing for immunity, but then they think if you don't take it, you're the threat. But wait a minute. If the vaccine works, why am I a threat?
Right. Yeah.
That makes no sense.
Yeah, that's always been a nonsensical argument.
Makes no sense. It works. You think it works. Why am I a threat? I'm nothing to you. You've got the thing. Why am I a threat? That's so silly.
So I want to close with a question on Ozempic, and then we'll roll through our final segment, if you don't mind. We didn't get to Ozempic Face.
No.
I'm assuming it's got something to do with that muscle atrophy, but
Correct.
am I wrong? Correct. Okay. Can you tell me more?
Man, Ozempic Face. I mean, that is such a fascinating phenomenon of what's happening to folks taking this drug for an extended period of time. So again, you're trying to deal with your overall weight issue, but now it's draining out the tissue in your face, making you look gaunt, making you look malnourished, making you look, I don't know, 10, 20 years older than you actually are. So now it's like now you're creating this cosmetic opportunity, for the plastic surgeons out there to fill you with collagen and, anything else, all these different treatments that people use to make their face look better. So it's like, it's just another phase of this crazy merry-go-round that people get caught up on, where they take one drug for one thing and then it causes side effects that they then go to another provider for another treatment to deal with that issue. But yeah, I mean, it's a terrible, again, who wants to, I mean, we're all vain to some degree. So, this idea that you now have this gaunt, older looking face, I mean, to me, that's a really serious side effect that I don't think anybody wants to have. But again, in their quest to have the quick fix or the magic bullet, this is one of the other unfortunate side effects, that you're losing that good tissue in your face, and now you're looking like almost a skeleton.
When it comes to good tissue, is that something that can be regained in your face?
In the face, yeah, that's tough. I mean, how do you work out your face?
Yeah, because if it's about building muscle mass, you can
right,
build it in your arms, your legs,
right.
your face. I would imagine that would be.
I don't know, James. I don't know how you rebuild your face without, again, cosmetic procedures. There's no getting that muscle and that, naturally distributed fat in your cheeks and around your nose line and your mouth. How do you get? I don't know how you get that back.
Mm.
I don't think you do get it back naturally.
Wow. Well worth thinking about. Wow.
I mean,
you're permanently Skeletor.
You really are. I mean, again, unless you do all of these, these injectable treatments that they're not even permanent, right? I mean, you inject that stuff in your face to try to take, I've got a little bit of a line here, unfortunately. So, I try to do, you try to do some injection to deal with that. That's not permanent. I mean, it's gonna last for a few months, but then you're going to do it again. So for the folks that have ruined their face like that, I don't think there is a permanent solution.
Fascinating. Let's segue into a segment I like to call 10 the Hard Way.
Okay.
There are 10 rapid fire questions that we end every interview with.
Okay.
Number 1, if you could remove any law on the books today, what would it be and why? I have a guess, but what would it be?
Oh man, we just touched on it. We got to get rid of that 1986 law of giving all the vaccine manufacturers total immunity. We've got to get rid of that. That's a horrible law. That's not helping anybody. They need to be held accountable for injuring and killing people. It's a horrible law.
In the whole vaccine court deal, where if there's a case, any case against a vaccine maker, if you didn't know, listeners, you're not dealt with in normal court. You're dealt with in vaccine court.
Exactly. It's like some kangaroo arbitration court that most of the time they don't approve the person's case. They just say, well, too bad. No money for you and your family.
Number 2, what advice would you have for anyone who would like to walk in your footsteps?
Well, we didn't go too much in detail about my academic career. I spent roughly 25 years of my life and my career in academics running clinical trials in nutrition, supplements, and exercise. I would tell anybody who's, maybe at the undergraduate level thinking about a career in research, if you're not willing to work like 80 hours a week and make it your entire life's obsession, passion, total commitment, don't do it. It's not like working at a bank. You show up at 9, you leave at 4:30, you go home and you have dinner with the wife and kids. You don't think about anything other than maybe Mr. Smith's loan application for the next morning, and that's it. And you get your nice salary. No, I mean, academic research is dog eat dog, especially for a person like me. You want to talk about the black sheep, being in my field, in my niche, at a very conventional, conservative medical school where it's all about pharmacology, and the people not in the drug world, it's genetics or something like that. So here I am, one of just a handful or 2 handfuls of people doing nutrition and supplement research. Man, if you're not, if you're not interested in giving that totally a 100% commitment to that type of life, you will not succeed. You will fail because you will get passed over by somebody else who is willing to put out that kind of effort. And after 20, 25 years of it, James, I couldn't do it anymore. I was totally fried. And fortunately, I made some discoveries in my Alzheimer's research that maybe you invite me back and we can talk about that. But that was launched. That actually, the best results of my research career actually was the beginning of the end of my academics that led me into going into the dietary supplement world.
I'd love to. Absolutely. Next time we'll go into it in depth. Also, I'd love to go into your thoughts on exercise. We touched on it,
Sure.
but didn't go deeper on it. I'd love to talk about that more as
Sure.
well.
I would love to as well.
What would you say to an 18-year-old you, and what would an 18-year-old you think of you now?
The 18-year-old me was a guy who was confident in his abilities, but was a bit shy. And certainly when it came to like relationships, asking a girl out on a date, being a bit more aggressive, not in a negative way, but just, having more of a confident approach to girls and dating. And I mean, I never had any hesitation about my academic potential, but definitely socially, I would encourage my 18-year-old to be more socially outward and more, again, just, taking kind of the bull by the horn, so to speak. And so my 18-year-old looking at me now and say, wow, John, you really you progressed, like you evolved into that person. It took you a while to get there, but had you started earlier, maybe other things would have changed and been a bit different for you. But that would be my absolute most interesting recommendation to him.
What was the last song you sang along to?
The last song I sang along to, oh man, I was just singing to 1999 by Prince today.
Nice.
Right before you and I got on together, 1999 was playing and I was singing along to it.
Awesome. What was the worst compliment you've been given, and what's the best?
The worst what?
The worst compliment you've been given, and the best.
You mean a backhanded compliment?
Yes.
Oh man. It would have to be something about my, my Southern heritage. We Southerners are, noted for being nice, hospitable people. So it would be something along the lines of, oh, you're such a nice guy, but you're a pushover, right? Like it's, you're too easy. Like you're so naive and gullible, this kind of a thing. The best compliment I've ever had is that because of my focus on health and not to brag too much, but being who I've been with nutrition and taking care of myself, I routinely get complimented about how I look, and I don't look at my age, these kinds of things. And I'm very appreciative when people go out of their way to make that, and it makes me feel good, and it validates the path that I've chosen to live this way.
Awesome. What's the best piece of advice you've received?
My dad told me before I even started college, he said one day to me, I'll never forget this conversation. Dad said to me, John, you're a smart guy, and it doesn't matter how much you know, how much you learn. He said, so much of your life will come down to not what you know, but who you know, because it's all about social connections and meeting people and letting your network expand and, helping other people who in return help you. And that's been so true.
Agreed. What film reminds you most of your career path, and how?
What film? Well, that's a good question too. Could be, it could potentially be the first three Star Wars movies where I see myself as a little bit like Luke Skywalker, where, Luke, he obviously had no clue who he was born as, the family he was born into. He had to meet Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan had to kind of give him, or not kind of, he had to give him the guidance. Then he gets to Yoda, takes it to the next level. So I've kind of had that kind of a career in a progression of learning things and meeting people and having mentors along the way who have taken me to the next level. Not that I'm saying that I'm a Jedi Knight at this point. I mean, I don't claim to know everything about nutrition and health. It's just there's way too much information to know. And even being the smartest person on the planet, you can't possibly know everything. So if you look at a Jedi Knight as being like all knowing, maybe that's not exactly the correct analogy, but something along those lines. I've definitely had an evolution in nutrition and health and wellness, similar to the Luke Skywalker becoming a Jedi Knight kind of a thing.
Use the Force, John.
Exactly. Let the Force be with you.
Everyone has a center, whether it's moral or ethical or what have you. I like to call it a cornerstone. What's yours?
Oh, this is such a great point. It's kind of, for me, the golden rule: treat other people the way you want to be treated.
I love it. In 5 words, tell me all your thoughts on God.
5?
5 words or less.
Wow. God is the consciousness.
4. Nice.
I couldn't get a 5th word there.
Any questions for me?
Well, James, I mean, you and I are just getting to know each other for the first time today, but I feel like we've made a really nice connection. I hope you feel the same way, and it's been a pleasure having this conversation with you. So I would welcome any opportunities that you'd like to talk again. And if you want to learn more about, my research that even potentially could help you in your own personal quest for health, send your shipping address to Jeff, and I will have a sample of what we call daily brain care, the formula that we developed in our Alzheimer's and multiple sclerosis research. And I'll be more than glad to send you a couple of samples and then have you try it, and we can come back on again. But that's my life's passion, is promoting this research my colleagues and I have conducted over the last 20 years and how it can help basically any person. I mean, you don't have to be sick or have neurodegeneration to be helped by this. I've been taking this formula for over a decade myself. My mom's been on it for over 13 years. Leonette, my wife, she started taking it when she was pregnant with Angie. Both of our children have been taking it since they were about 6 months of age. So this is literally a cradle to grave kind of a thing. And I'd be more than happy to share that with you and help you in any way that I can, as just a way of, showing who I am and my desire to help people.
Yeah, I'd love to give it a shot. And sure, I think that's a good idea. I'll share it with Jeff. I'll get a sample, and we'll do it again.
Wonderful.
Well, John, it's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed this a lot, and there's a lot of threads that I would love to pull, and we'll do that next time.
Let's do it again. We can do it as many times as you want. Like I said, I've got a big soapbox.
All right.
Okay, buddy. Well, stay warm up there.
Oh, I'll try, and you try to cool down.
Yes. Okay, buddy. Have a good night.
Yeah, be well.